Hello and welcome to part two. To being non-binary, part two. Yeah, this is the second half of our non-binary episode, joined by Kim and Kenny. And yeah, this episode kind of came in later than we were planning.
Yeah, we were busy.
As some of you may have noticed, we were actually planning a whole ass party.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was so good. Queer Dreams with Kenny and Kim as well.
Yep.
Joined by our third half, Ava, and Six Islands Zine, Iki Elixine. But we'll talk a little bit about the party at the end, so in our outro. Because now we're going to get into our episode of today.
So in this episode, again, we touched upon a whole lot of topics, but while obviously we listened back to it to make a small overview for you guys, but while listening, we noticed that we speak a whole lot more papiamento in this episode.
We do.
Than usual. So we thought it would be a fun drinking game to drink every time that you hear us speak papiamento.
Yeah.
But besides papiamento, we also touched upon different topics like if your partner or is the partner of a non-binary person pansexual as opposed to gay or bi or lesbian, or is that maybe transphobic? There's also about sexual orientation in general and how that relates to the gender identity.
Yeah. We also talk about using wrong pronouns when the non-binary person is not around. Meaning how do you actually see the person as a non-binary person, or you still have those notions in your head about, male, female, etc. How we define the terms queer, trans, lesbian, and gay. It's a fluid process, as a lot of all three of us had noticed during the conversation. And it was also very interesting to have that conversation flow too, in that fluid way of trying to make sense of our thoughts behind it.
Yeah. There's also how do you even know if you're non-binary in the first place? I think a lot of other people, or just many people in general, don't really know how you can find that out for yourself. But of course, this is mentioned also in this episode. And interestingly enough, how video games can help to discover this.
Yeah. Help me. And also, gender identity can be fluid as well. Just the same as with, terms like gay, lesbian, bi. So also gender identity itself and how fluid it can be, how that fluidity, works with gender expression, gender identity, and what that meant for us. That was very cool to talk about. And also physical attraction is not the same as being attracted to someone. So quote unquote being attracted to someone. That was also an interesting topic that we touched upon. And also dysphoria and gender affirming surgery. That was a very, very nice conversation. So yeah, we touched upon a lot of subjects.
Yeah, and these weren't all of the topics that we talked about. These are just, I guess, a few of the main ones, but there are a whole bunch more that we did talk about. But yeah, we couldn't list all of them in the intro, so just listen to the episode. And at the end, we'll talk a little bit more about the party as well. We hope you enjoyed this one just as much as you did the first part, and if you don't remember how much you enjoyed the first part, then go listen to that too.
I did want to kind of touch upon the subject of gender and then sexuality, because recently me and my boyfriend kind of had a conversation about the topic. And I just found it really interesting and wanted to hear other people's thoughts and you guys' thoughts, obviously. He was saying that he wanted to switch over to his identity. He's bisexual, and he wanted to switch over to pansexual to be more inclusive of me. And for me, my immediate reaction was no, why would you do that? And it for multiple reasons. mostly because I feel like sometimes that can be seen as abiphobic, but also I, for me, like culturally and politically speaking, the pansexual identity has always been a bit of a question mark. I never knew where exactly to kind of place it in terms of things. And for me, sometimes I feel like it's even maybe transphobic in a way, or used in a very transphobic way to kind of like other trans people, because it's like some people might use it like, oh hey, I'm attracted to women, and then now I'm attracted to this trans woman, so I have to like change it to fit her into it instead of just saying that I'm straight or bisexual or whatever. And also if you're bi and then not wanting to be kind of inclusive, but then you're kind of being biphobic because you're implying that bisexuality as an identity is transphobic. And circling back to like the idea of pansexuality, for me, like, describes sometimes the attraction to people regardless of their gender. I feel like that's offensive a little bit because for me, at least, I take a lot of pride in my gender, and it is part of my identity. Um, it's like saying like, hey, I'm attracted to you, but not your gender. But like, it doesn't make sense because yeah, exactly, right? And I just I don't know. How do you guys feel about it?
That's interesting because I feel like that whole like bisexual and pansexual discourse has been going on for so long, and I don't identify as either, so I feel like I don't really. Well, I used to identify as pansexual, but now I don't anymore. I'll get into that in a bit because it has a point to this as well. But I always understood bisexuality as also, or as what I see a lot of the times bisexual people saying as well, as it doesn't mean you're only attracted to men and women, but other genders as well. So to be honest, for myself, it's like kind of interchangeable, but then also not. And I think it's mostly what you feel the most comfortable with is what you identify as. But that was one of the, I think, misconceptions a lot of white people have been trying to get out of the way, is that it means you're only attracted to genders, when it means you're becoming attracted to more if you identify as being bisexual. That's how I see it when it comes to that. In regards to other, like, I guess it's sexuality and attraction to other people, or also other people's attraction to me, I'm not gonna lie, I'm struggling with that too, because I'm like, do you understand that, or do you see me as a woman or not? I think that's what sometimes keeps me back from like dating people. So I'm like, do I have to like have this conversation with you? Like, you know, I'm non-binary, but do you actually see me as non-binary, or is it just something like, Sam, no, it's cool. I guess I'll just use they them pronouns, but you still see me as a woman, and that's a problem for me because that's not who I am. But also, you know, if that's how you're gonna treat me, it's gonna cause an issue at some point. So that's something I do struggle with at the moment, but also, I realize language changes a lot, or it adapts a lot too, and the meaning of things change and adapt a lot too. For example, the discourse right now being had on the identifying as being a lesbian, for example. Um, I do feel I do identify as a lesbian now, and before I wasn't comfortable with it because I was like, okay, but I'm not only attracted to women. But I, you know, so it's like, but it is the closest I feel to sexuality wise, I guess. But so I was like struggling with that a lot, and then like I saw a few TikToks on this discourse, and some people kind of mentioned that it kind of has changed to just being kind of like an umbrella term too for people who just they identify more on the female spectrum of things, but also experiences, because you know, like it's a difference being assigned female at birth, and your experiences look way different than someone who might be who has been assigned male at birth. And your life experiences, your attraction, the way you look at people, the way you love, and the way you feel about people is in a very specific lens versus, you know, it was the other way around. And so it kind of, the term lesbian kind of encapsulates all of that. I have no idea if I'm making sense right now, but because I am still trying to figure it out for myself, but it made me feel more comfortable with the label, because it's like, okay, I feel included, and I also understand why other non-binary people also identify as lesbian, because it kind of is not only the sexuality, but some of them even like correlated with their gender. And then I'm like, oh, okay, that was a lot for me to like get into even, but it made sense at some point. And I'm like, yeah, because that's how, you know, language is interchangeable and how it like keeps adapting. And I guess the moral to the story is, it's about what one you are comfortable with, but also when it comes to other people's attraction, they need to understand for themselves. Do they understand who you are and what your gender is?
Yeah.
You know?
True.
And yeah.
And also on your own personal definition and experience of bisexuality, lesbianism, pansexuality, what you understood it to be when you just learned about it, and what you understand it to be now. And that can always change. It can also change a few years from now compared to what you feel now. And it's not only you and your own personal experience, but also the zeitgeist and what people around are doing with that information. Just like with the term queer in general, back in the day, it used to be offensive, and now people in the queer community are have reclaimed it, not are reclaiming it, but have already reclaimed it. And it's only the people who are stuck in the past who keep insisting that it's a derogatory term. But also those same people, if they use it, you know that they use it in a derogatory way, so then that's also not okay. It's only if people who are actually living the experiences choose to use it for themselves, then that's okay. You just basically have to listen. If you're not part of that community, don't overstep anything. Don't assume that you get to do whatever you want. Just listen from the people around you, and they will guide you. And you just have to be open-minded and follow their guidance. And if you make a mistake, then just fucking be humble about it. And, you know, be like, oh, whoops, didn't know, I'll do better next time.
Just like correction on the history on the word queer. I think it did start off as offensive, but then it was reclaimed like in the past. So it's actually more of an older term, and now it's just being seen as like offensive again.
What?
And that's mostly due to TERFs. Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole thing. But yeah, I just wanted to say that. And aside from that, like, to like like a shari abisa, it's really important for the other person to like see you like fully as you. And I really agree with that as well, fully 100%. And actually, like, again, me and my boyfriend were having this conversation, and partially also because I did start exploring more of my non-binariness when I was already in the relationship. And we were kind of talking about like how when you get to know a person, right, like you might be attracted to like their eye, their hair color, whatever. But then that's like just the initial basis of attraction, right? And then it forms into like this whole thing that you kind of get to know the person, and you kind of start loving them in their entirety. And I link that back to kind of to sexuality, because like you might be attracted to like a smidgen of masculinity that this person presents, or a smidgen of femininity, but then you kind of get to know the person as a whole, and it's really important to respect that whole. And also I really relate to your experience of how you use lesbian, because I have the same, but with gay, obviously. I know my attraction isn't solely based, or isn't solely towards guys, but it's just I just always felt like gay fit my experience the most. At some point I did kind of start moving away and start toying with the idea of maybe being bisexual, but then that also didn't really fully fit. At some point I was like kind of queer. I don't even really know what I am now, but yeah, so I really relate to that part that you were talking about.
And I think for me, it's indeed is that I think one thing, and I think it comes back to what Kim said way in the beginning, is about reaching that point when you're at peace, knowing that you don't have to figure it all out and you just feel the way you feel. And I have that with my sexuality too. It's like this is how I feel the most comfortable identifying right now. Might change in the future. It might not. That I don't necessarily want to define it for myself constantly. It doesn't have to be defined constantly. It just needs to fit right now, and that's it. And whatever happens in the future happens in the future. And I think that I let go of a lot of anxiety towards my non-binariness as well to do with that. I was like first very like obsessed with the idea that I have to identify this for myself. I have to like define it for myself because what the fuck does this mean? And now I'm like, listen, just fucking chill. You will figure it out for yourself, but also just exist as you are, and that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you want to add?
I have to say, since the whole coming out, since the whole figuring it out, I have been fortunate enough to meet someone who saw me in my complete non-binariness without having to explain much, which was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I am forever grateful to them. And yeah, I don't know how to explain how that felt, but it just felt really, really peaceful. Not having to defend a part of you, not having to choose, or have to, como bisa? So I was born as a female, but I don't identify as a woman. You know, you don't have to choose to be neither. You're just you, and they see you for you.
So you don't have to prove anything.
Yeah.
You just have to exist.
Yes.
Yeah, you get to fucking chill.
So yeah, when it comes to that part, I am very fortunate to have had that experience. When it comes to sexuality, though, I have been struggling with it. I am coming more to terms with it as well, with the term lesbian. I was to say I was never attracted to guys is a lie, but I am not attracted to men in any emotional or romantic or sexual way. I just find certain men attractive and that's it. You know, that has nothing to do with my sexuality.
Ah, okay, but then in a regular way,
In a
anybody could look at another person regardless and be like attractive, not attractive.
Exactly.
We're pretty.
Yeah, I think that's
That's a pretty human right there. Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's not that deep. It's just literally attractive person, not attractive person. Boom.
Yeah.
But the thing that made it
You're ugly.
No.
real this afternoon in the train there was this guy. He has such a nice beard, but his hair was hideous.
No.
Sorry, I had to say that. I'm like, you have a pretty face, but your hair makes your face look hideous.
Did you say that?
No, it was just in my head.
Really?
But yeah. But my sexual orientation has been a struggle since discovering and accepting my gender identity. Because I am not a woman, but for me, being a lesbian means you're a woman who's attracted to women. And since the last year and a half, 2 years ish, it has been slowly morphing into what Shadi just explained. It is just more than that, you know. I'm not gonna repeat everything that they just said. Just scroll back in this podcast.
If you already forgot.
But no, for me right now, I am more okay with calling myself a lesbian, a non-binary lesbian, if you will. Because I am not a woman, but I am a female assigned at birth, and I am attracted to female assigned at birth people. However, they decide to identify themselves.
Yeah.
I think it also comes down to experience as well,
Yeah.
or the way you view the world and stuff like that. I think that's also very important to note that I feel like we always, if I think about the queer community, how vicious we can be sometimes in attacking each other for just trying to figure certain things out.
Yeah, and
Or
unforgiving too.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
and it's like your definition is maybe not the same as me, and I'm not trying to invalidate your experience or your definition. It's just how I see it for myself. And I think this whole point is because obviously we have to constantly defend ourselves to cis hetero people. So I think that kind of like boils down to that we constantly have to justify and have our experiences be invalidated constantly. So we're constantly like doing that to ourselves, and like no, you can't like identify as this or you can't do that. It's like I just want to be free to figure it out for myself without feeling that like attacked, you know?
I just want to be.
Yeah.
Literally.
Like if you come to think of it, this is technically something that's very personal and that you only really discuss in this many details with a few people that you love. You don't go around telling your colleagues or your casual acquaintances or whatever. You don't discuss this with just anybody. You discuss it with like only the people closest to you, and you would hope that those would also be the people who are there for your journey and respectful of your journey. So this podcast is also an exception to the rule that you guys are discussing it in this much detail, but it's also everybody's personal experience. And normally you wouldn't, like, think to yourself, you wouldn't have any conversation explaining your sexuality or your gender to anybody. So why would you feel like somebody else would owe you that too, just because it doesn't compute with whatever you decided a while ago? So yeah, I think that this is honestly a blessing for people to even get an inside look into what other people experience, but also mind your business.
I think that's the whole like point of this this
Yeah.
episode is like, first of all, be free and find peace in discovering who you are as you are, and also mind your fucking business. It's not
Yeah.
hard. But I also had like another question. So something I have been mulling over Tame for a while, and speaking of the terms we identify or not with, how do y'all feel about identifying as transgender? Or as a label of transgender?
I have a lot of difficulty with that. If I may get into it, disclaimer to those listening, heads up, this is something very personal, and I'm about to say this to the whole fucking world. Yay! I have decided I want to get top surgery eventually. I said it. But that means for me, or doesn't mean, how am I gonna continue identifying myself? I don't feel like a man, so I'm not gonna transition into a man, so therefore I'm not a trans man. But I am still kind of figuring it out where on that spectrum I fall. I look up to this very specific person. Shout out to Thorn Vineyard. They've been on Curacao, or I'm not sure if they are still there, but anyway, there's a picture of them topless in their swim shorts on the beach with top surgery done, and honestly, fucking goals. For me, going home, because Curacao, that's where I'm from, being free like that, for me, that is my ultimate goal. But in terms of the gender identity, I definitely don't feel that I belong on either side of the trans spectrum. For me, it's still I am neither. So yeah, non-binary just fits it for me, I guess.
Yeah. And then when do you feel at your absolute best in general, like with your gender or orientation? Just when do you feel like, fucking yes?
When I am wearing loose shorts, um, at this moment, a super tight sports bra that kind of covers my tits, and when my muscles show, I don't know, that aesthetic, that physical aesthetic for me. Yeah, that's it for me. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, yeah. So for me, I just kind of boil it down really simple. I'm not. I don't feel like the gender I was assigned at birth, so I'm trans. Um, but within that, it has so many connotations, and I feel like people always have questions or ideas about what that's supposed to mean. Um, for me, that's just a very simple way of like being like, I'm not the gender I was assigned at birth, whatever that may mean, whatever shape that may take now or in the future, it's to be seen. Um, but outside of that, um, I also think it's like about all of these little boxes that we try to like fit ourselves in or fit our experience in, right? And going back to like my meditation or the trip I took to Scheveningen, um, on that trip, on that meditation, I realized just so many things about myself and all of these versions of myself that I was like, I'm a complex being, right? Like, I don't have to be just one thing all the time. I can be multiple things every day, all the time. Not sure where it was going with this. I had a point, but
Let's roll with it.
yeah. So like, if one day I wake up and decide to transition, I transition, right? But in that also, like on that trip, I was thinking to myself like, who would I be if I transitioned, right? Who would I even be if I was assigned female at birth? And I sat down and thought about like my many interests, and obviously, if I was assigned female at birth, my journey would have been totally different. But I still feel like I would have ended up at the same place because I still would have rebelled. I still would have, um, like I would have had more access to more feminine stuff, maybe, but I still would have rebelled and still found my way to the masculine stuff that I like. I like cars, I like video games, I like cartoons, the stuff that are typically more reserved for boys. Um, and sometimes I like to dress masculine, right? Like, I think as a kid I hated it, but now as an adult I've grown to appreciate that part of me, so sometimes I dress masculine. And I think to myself, like, yeah, I would have probably been in hoodies all the time. I wouldn't be like wearing dresses. Like, that's not me. Like, why try to force myself into like this role, into like this person that I'm not, just to like fit this identity of like transness, right? Like, it doesn't make sense. I can still be me. I can still wear hoodies. I can still like my beard. Like, some women have beards, right? Gender isn't like this one thing, and like that's, I guess what I'm trying to say is like it's complex. It can go so many different ways. It can be so many different things, and you need to allow yourself that freedom to kind of explore all that it can be.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
The reason I ask is actually that has been the last leg of my journey these past few months. Because it also made me realize that I have very specific views of what a transgender person is because of the shit we've been fed our whole lives, the stereotypes, the these type of things like body dysmorphia that I felt like I kind of felt bad, or I didn't want to feel like I can use a label that I have no right to use because I didn't feel like I was either a trans woman or a trans man in this case, because I can't be a trans woman. I don't think that's how that works.
No.
But you know what I mean, right? I hope everyone got that what I meant. But I like so I didn't feel like either spectrum side, like man or woman. So I was like, okay, but that also means I can't be transgender because that's what it is, right?
Yes.
But the more I started learning about what it means, the more I started delving into the whole gender stuff, and I realized it's transgender literally means you don't identify with the gender you were assigned at birth, and that is what I am, or that's how I identify. I do not identify with that gender, so I was mulling it over for quite some time, and then what helped was seeing other examples of people who why they say that they use the term, or explaining about that, and explaining in the fact that it's the same as non-binary, it's also an umbrella. And we have very specific stereotypes of what we believe to be transgender men and transgender women, and what they should look like or should feel. The dysphoria part, like not everyone has dysphoria in that way. Some trans people do, some trans people don't. Some trans people can only feel good in their bodies with gender reaffirming surgery. Some don't. Some choose not to because they don't need it, but that doesn't invalidate their gender. So, or the gender they identify as. So, all of these different things kind of made me realize or get more comfortable with that idea, but also made me realize not everyone is comfortable and don't have to be comfortable with that idea of, identifying as trans. But I realized these last few months, I would say, that I do identify with that term. I also started mulling over. I think I was too scared to think about it in the beginning, because I didn't want to admit okay, but what if I am a trans man? Like that's a lot to take in, and I don't want to do that not because I didn't want to, but because I just knew what kind of life that would mean for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was very scary to even think about. But then I also realized, okay, you have to face this, otherwise you're never gonna be happy being yourself if you don't ask these questions. And so one of the things that kind of helped me, and this is gonna sound very childish, but it worked for me. I like to play video games, and I recently bought this game which I'm obsessed with. It's the best thing for an ADHD person to ever have, or in my case. It's called Stardew Valley, and it's just I guess if you ever played Farmville in the past, it's a little bit like that.
Farmville.
It's
Throwback.
Jeez, warn us before you throw in that word. Okay, continue.
Listen. Okay, so Stardew Valley is you play this character who was has been working his 9 to 5 cube desk job and got tired of it, and then finds a will of their grandfather that had a farm. So basically inheriting the farm in this town off the coast of somewhere. And you move there and you live your life there, and you literally farm and forage, and it's fucking fun. I don't know. Anyways, and then at some point but the problem with that game is you can only identify as male or female when you're creating your character. And so I was fine, whatever. I'll do female because and I noticed even with games, or even when at this point, I guess I'm so comfortable in my non-binariness that I feel uncomfortable when people see me as a woman, or call me a woman, or use she, her, whatever. And then so I already felt uncomfortable with that, and I was what if I create a male character? How would I feel about this? And then I created a male character, and I was playing around with it, and first I was oh, this feels different, this feels interesting, I don't hate it. But then once I started getting into it and leading into it, I was yeah, but this doesn't feel good either. This feels so final, but it's not like that either. So once I finally allowed myself to mull over that idea of I could be a trans man, I realized that's not enough for me, or it doesn't fit for me either. I knew I was already battling with my issues that I have with my femininity because of all the things I went through growing up. So I already knew that that's something I had to deal with. But then the other side of what I never allowed myself to think about was also not it. And that's when I kind of settled into my non-binariness and realized that, okay, so you don't identify as a trans man either. You just simply have those moments where you do feel more masculine or do feel more feminine. And, you know, maybe in the future, I don't know if I would ever need gender reassignment surgery, but that's also okay. And it is okay if you do, but still don't identify. It's about, literally, as the word says, gender reaffirming surgery. So whatever gender you need to feel reaffirmed as, and is that surgery is going to help you with that, that's it. And whatever that is, that's your definition. And so that's kind of how I look at it now, and how I've settled more into my identity.
Yeah, I really like that. And I really like how you linked it back to video games, because that's also like an experience that I've had. Just all the time, like choosing women and just living in that, but also sometimes going back to men and then going back to women and then kind of going back and forth. I think the best game so far that I've played was Animal Crossing, similar to Stardew Valley. But they
Shout
kind
out
of
quarantine time.
I mean, it's Thursday, so throwback Thursday.
Yo.
But I felt so good in that game because, like, I could just, anytime that I woke up, I would go and dress my little character up, and I would just be like, whatever I wanted to wear. Like, if it was a dress that day, I would wear a dress. If it was like pants and more boy clothes, I would be more boy. And the good part about it is that the body, the face, everything isn't shaped in a particular feminine or masculine way, right? So it's just androgynous, so you can just be whatever you want to be, like, every day. And that was really reaffirming for me because, like, it allowed me to just, like, show up as myself, as my full 100% self every day. Like, if I could shape shift and
Maybe even your ideal self.
Yeah. Exactly. And it was, I don't know, it's just really nice.
Shout out to video games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, it's very underrated, but again, that's a different conversation. But yeah, it's this has been a really good conversation. We touched upon a lot of topics. Is there anything that any of you have been really wanting to get out there?
I already said what I really wanted to get out there.
Also, fucking high five to you. That's awesome.
Yeah, sorry parents, but
Hashtag not sorry.
not sorry. Yep, you gotta live my true life, true
Yeah.
self.
You know,
Yes. No, but I wanted to quickly add, Shadi, thank you for explaining your experience on how you see the umbrella term trans. That gave me a slight different perspective now to ponder on. So thank you for that. Purely just for myself, how I see the definition of things. Yeah. So.
Okay, guys, this is what it means to be open-minded. Write it down.
Learn from us.
But I think I just want to say, to round this off, I think we don't take enough time to step back and also realize what it means to live in our truth in this society, and honestly, how brave I find it that we do what we do, and even though knowing what it means to live this way, what challenges and what violence it can come with, still realizing that, you know, it's that or having to be a fake person, or, you know, not living in your truth, and then still being brave enough to do that, I think is something to be commended. And we want to thank y'all for joining us on this episode today.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you for having
Okay, That was probably one of my favorite conversations I've had so far on this podcast. I might be biased, I'm just saying.
Definitely biased.
But that was a very lovely, like, open conversation. It's also partly why we decided to do it in 2 parts, because if you had not listened to the first episode, you could already tell in this episode we talk about a lot of things. In the first episode we also mostly touched upon, the meaning behind things, like meaning behind non-binary, meaning behind pronouns, meaning behind, and here I think especially in this episode we dive deeper into
personal experiences, maybe. And also to me it was the nicest to hear that the same thing can mean different things to 3 different people who all 3 identify as non-binary. So I think it's definitely worth considering all points of views, and also that obviously goes to say that not every single person, just because they use the same or similar label, means that they have the exact same experience. So the best thing that any ally could do is just to ask their friend some questions. First of all, ask if it's okay to start asking questions at any given moment, but just, to have that conversation with your friend about their own identity, and not necessarily think that just because you heard one episode, or I guess 2 parts of an episode, here, that means that you know everything.
And then you're an expert, and then you can go tell other people how to calm down. This just,
Cálmate.
Cálmate, por favor. Okay, but yeah, so also the reason why we made this in 2 parts, so, not all of the information gets lost into translation, and it's better to digest. It was a very nice conversation to have. And I think I also want to add, especially, like, I've been thinking about that a lot these last few weeks. We do live in a time where I notice there's a lot of pushback against, well, there's always been pushback, obviously, but it's just getting more violent. I noticed lately just a lot of pushback against trans people, against queer people, against, women, people that have a uterus, just there's a lot of pushback in general. And I think it's interesting to emphasize how even these type of conversations are very revolutionary, and I'm glad we have the privilege to keep talking about these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, a little bit about a queer party.
I mean, part of being able to experience who you are and like experiment in different ways of expressing yourself is to have safe spaces to do that, and that's exactly what we were trying to do with the party. And to those who could join, thanks, because you guys made the party so special, and it was so nice to be able to see everybody having fun and letting loose.
It was the best. Like, it's really seeing people come into their own, and some of them for the first time, seeing them in a different light and being more themselves than I've ever seen them. And one of the interesting things is a lot of comments that we would get at the party was people just feel generally safe and comfortable. One very interesting comment that a friend of ours made was, what was very interesting? We were all dancing, all having a good time, all like around each other and each other's space, but I didn't feel like pushed in a single like second, like as in when someone walks by you and then like hits you or like get
like shoved
in general.
Wow.
And he mentioned how every single experience he has in clubs, wherever, no matter where he is, even if he's standing on the back of the wall, people will still somehow find a way to shove themselves into him. And then I was like, whoa, wow, that was like very interesting to me, because I noticed like when I'm in other spaces that not only it's necessarily by POC, with way more white people, that is a very common experience. I don't know, what's very interesting. But
I think we wanted to make this party because I think you guys went to another party, a Caribbean party. So I think it's awesome that we started the podcast at the beginning of the pandemic, and then I say this between air quotes because it's not actually the end of the pandemic, but when one of the first Caribbean parties were thrown, quote unquote, after the pandemic, you guys went right to the first party, and then they were like, yo, this fucking sucks. They were being homophobic on stage,
so
and nobody
horrible.
was saying anything about it. And that's how the idea for the party was born.
Yeah, we were like already thinking, okay, what kind of party could we do? We want to, create a space where everyone could just like chill and escape the fucking misery of the world at the moment. And then we're like, you know what? So we don't have and we need more of is a queer Caribbean party. And that's where Queer Dreams came from. So I think in that sense, our mission was pretty successful.
Yeah, I think we also were lucky that everybody we know is queer.
Yeah.
So we could just point to any random friend and say, let's organize a party together, and they would be queer. So that's pretty
great.
safe.
But all in all, Queer Dreams was really a dream. Pun intended. And I'm glad we get to do these type of things, in many different ways, like with this podcast, with this episode, with these parties or these events that we create, and just step by step creating safer spaces for people to come into their own and discover their identities. And so that's nice.
You mentioned before already that the party was organized together with Alexine and Igmara from Six Island Zine, or I guess we shouldn't be using government names. I mean, Iki and Alex.
Iki and Alex from Six Island Zine, yes.
And of course the regular team from Culturama.
Yes.
So the 5 of us actually,
The
not
5.
just the 3 that you see in pictures.
Yes, like I said, our third half, Ava, and then of course Kim and Kenny, who have just become as much as the part of our team as the 3 of us. So yeah, it was a lovely experience also to have I've had organized it with this group of people, because I do feel like we connect really well with each other. And I think it like translates into the party itself and how the experience was for a lot of people. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad everybody had fun.
Yeah.
We also had fun, even though I've made an assessment afterwards, and 100% of us were delirious. So.
Yeah, I think very much so. Yeah.
The party ended at 5. Why did we do that to
I
ourselves?
don't know. We were just like, I was definitely running on fumes and adrenaline at the end. And I could not be happier. Okay, that's a lie. I was kind of sad, but like, at 5 o'clock when the lights went on, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, let's go. I'm gonna take a nap right here.
Right here on the floor. Oh my God. It was such an experience. And who knows? Maybe.
Well, I mean, you're acting coy, but people at the party before the party were already telling us, I'm gonna be there for the second edition, and all of us looking at each other like, what, second edition?
Yeah,
what?
I didn't. Who okayed this? But yeah, pretty much. I think we kind of been bullied into creating a second
I don't think we
one.
have a choice.
No,
People will.
we don't. They will like, yeah. I think
They'll protest. They'll shut down the highways with your tractors.
Okay, I think it's about time to wrap this up.
Yeah, let's
hope y'all enjoyed. See you next time.
Bye.
They can't see my Oh my God.
Okay, so what is one example of a ridiculously gendered thing?
Clothing, shaving cream,
Babies.
not the babies. I mean, yes. Honestly, fuck gender reveal parties.
This isn't a competition, but can you win?
Always, I feel though, like